the path out of the economic downturn may actually run straight through Silicon Valley. Tech stocks like Apple, Intel, and Yahoo have all been on their way up since March. And take a look, in fact, at the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite. The orange line is NASDAQ, and the blue line represents Dow. You can see that while both are up, NASDAQ's been getting a little bit more love. It's stronger, up nearly 27% for the year. Joining me now to talk about all this is Silicon Valley entrepreneur and investor Audrey McClain. She's also a professor at Stanford University, joined again by Mort Zuckerman as well. So, Audrey, we started this conversation a couple weeks ago about whether or not, for all this difficult economic time we're having, whether or not Silicon Valley can help lead the way forward and help lead us out of the recession. Your thoughts?
Well, when we spoke, I guess 2 weeks ago now, we talked about the fact that there's a pretty strong precedent for this. If you look at the 70s and 80s, there was a real bad economy, tight venture capital markets, and a dormant IPO market. Yet we saw quite a few significant companies like Intel and FedEx and Microsoft and Cisco and Apple all emerge during that time frame. So I think we can expect to see something similar to that now.
And I thought the point you made last time, which I thought was very interesting, and more interesting in your take on this as someone who's invested and built companies too, was that oddly enough, you said that during difficult times, sometimes you get even better companies. It's a little Darwinian.
Absolutely. When capital's tight, the ideas have to be more compelling, and the entrepreneur needs to be more tenacious, and the venture capitalist needs to be more patient, because they have to fund those companies over a longer period of time till they're really able to build a company that can go public.
Certainly our comparative advantage as a country is in the high-tech venture capital area. It doesn't mean it's going to solve things in the short run, but the long-run future of our economy is going to be dependent on that. So what are the restrictions now going forward in your judgment?
Well, first of all, Mort, I think your observation is absolutely on the money. If you look at the venture-backed companies, they represent today 17.6% of GDP and 9.1% of all private sector jobs.
Wow.
That's 10 million jobs. So if you look at the ecosystem that we've got, which is this balance of innovation and investment, we have to make sure we're making moves from a policy standpoint that are supportive of that ecosystem, so we know where the next 10 million jobs come from.
And what's the biggest policy difference in your mind that will allow Facebook to hire a lot more people, allow Twitter, or even the tech companies that are just getting started and that we don't know of yet?
Right, it's the ones we don't know of yet. I think it's a three-legged stool. It's research, it's innovation, and it's capital. On the research front, I was certainly pleased to see $24.5 billion from the Recovery Act going into 48, I think, early-stage companies that are building batteries and other eco-technologies. That's a good move.
But now I say this only because I know we only have a minute left, and I know you want to get to it. But you've told me before that you thought that while research and these other things are important, you've told me that immigration, you thought, was a key part of this conversation.
Immigration absolutely fuels innovation. Right. It did when Andrew Carnegie came here, and it did when Sergey started Google. Sergey was able to get his H-1B visa before we shut them down or ratcheted them down to such a low level after 9/11. We need to.
Bill Gates says that's the single most important issue that the high-tech world needs from Washington, which is to raise the number of people who can stay in the country. We are educating people. We're giving them PhDs in all the hard sciences, and then we're not allowing them to stay here. They're going into places like Hong Kong and becoming competitive with us.
I teach at Stanford. In '94, when I started on the faculty, 50% of my students were non-U.S. born. This year, 50% of my students are non-U.S. born. That hasn't changed. The difference is in '94, they virtually all stayed and took jobs here. Now they're virtually all forced to leave. And an interesting fact that people don't realize is 47% of all high-tech startups have at least one foreign-born founder.